hospitality is an industry which has been not been taken care from technology standpoint today. You can pretty much see from finance to medicals to banking to everything else, right? There is a huge penetration of technology happened, which gave us unparalleled advantage of growing businesses and doing some of the things which people would want to do it in better way, right? And technology as a perspective, when I look into, I feel this is a more of enabler, right? Rather than time consuming place where we don't want people to hang into our apps for a longer time, right? If they don't intend to book, right? If they intend to book, we want them to come into our app, right? And quickly book it in maybe 30 seconds and get out of it, right? It's all about trying to bring the software products to the smallest of the hotel and get them the advantage which probably the largest of the hotel are able to reap up today. Dedication and commitment is very exceptional level in India today.
Right.
A far more hustle is there, right? I think people want to go do things. They are more eager for people to come and give them complex and challenging problems, right? The experience is something which excites me deeply, right? To really think about how do we build experiences which enables people to do things much more better way than what they do it today. The supply is increasing, which means the hotels, experiences, leisure, right? All of those changes are happening. Today, if you really go to the remotest part of the India, you might find a place to stay, right? Which was not the case 5 years ago. Sometime when you're kind of challenged with the resources which you have it around, right? You come up with very innovative solutions, and which could be even, kind of 5 years or 7 years later, you can still be proud of saying that, okay, that's still a very relevant solution and can be used today. Right. This Jugaad, or I would say this innovative mindset, is very important because this enables us to think about basics on which those premises or rest of things are built, and you kind of know that what's the key elements and ingredients I can club in together to make what I need at the moment. I would kind of advise people to make sure the basics are not left out, right? Those are understood well, whether it's a DS, whether it's algo, whether it's operating system, because this will enable them to solve some of the problems which people have not solved so far.
Hi, this is Arnav, and welcome to yet another episode of SCALER Pod. And today we have with us Nirdosh, who is SVP of Engineering at OYO. Welcome to the episode.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I will get started with a question which is sort of my pet question that I ask everybody who comes, because I get lots of different answers and I am really interested in knowing about it, which is what does a day at work look like for you right now? Because I'm very interested, because I find people in large companies, small companies, different answers. What about you?
Yeah, so this, as you said, is correctly, the answer changes based upon which stage and where are you in your life, right?
Yeah.
So maybe I'll just take two shots on this to say how was my life when I look up from early management leadership role to the higher leadership role. How does it changes your perspective? I think the early part of the thing, it usually is like a download of a day early, right, is something which really drives your next day to really say, that's the thing I want to catch hold of it, right, and get it sorted out today, right? So you pretty much have predefined what you want to do. But once you move up and into leadership and professional management roles, I think the change which happens is usually in terms of you want to find what is the day you want to make today, right? So you are pretty much changing your priorities based upon what you see in the morning, and then plan your rest of the day. So today for me, pretty much thinking about what are my key business metrics, right? Morning, first thing to really go back and check that, saying, are those meeting or are there some challenges which I see today?
Right.
So some feedback will come from your partners, right? Where they are really looking out for some help, right? So you pretty much know which one to act on. But there is some of the signals you need to derive yourself, right? And that's where
partners, as in people looking after sales, marketing, product.
Exactly, right? So those are like product, business, people from the ground, right? So they are pretty much messaging you for certain things. These are the bunch of things which we really think there is something we need to look into it. When you specifically on the young businesses, I think there is every day there is something new which you really approach as a challenge, right? To go back and solve. So that's the day looks like. I'm kind of more a person who likes to be with every range of my team, right? Pretty much starting from interns to pretty much from directors to AVP to all the way, right? To make sure I do have a range where I can have a conversation with them, right? Which essentially means I would love to be the part of a design meeting. Sometime I would like to see code myself.
Right.
Just to make sure saying that I'm connected and I know what my people are doing. This enables me to be able to appreciate what people who work with me and what are they doing. Right. So that's the kind of useful day looks like.
Okay. Interesting. And then, so the next question, which, we just love to get to know more about the guest via that is, like starting from your days in college to now, how has the journey been like in the tech industry, where all you have been?
So, I think very few people know about me that I started a business when I was in college third year.
Okay.
Right? Unfortunately, it wasn't successful, right? So I needed to wind up the shop and then figure out how do I pay back some of the loans I took at that time, because there was no funding concept 20 years ago, right? So you pretty much take a loan from people on your personal guarantee, and I think some of those guarantees were at risk, right? Which I put it out at the time. So the only thing to me when I came out from my college at fourth year is that how do I get money so that I can repay this back first? Right? So pretty much I think I did that. Very few people know that for a very short instant I did taught at engineering college, and a very interesting subject I taught there was automata theory, right? And I think it's a very rare subject. Most people don't want to really study, but I think I found that to be very fascinating, and I think it's takes me back. My love for machine learning and data science is from that 20 years ago, right? Because I did used to teach that, and I used to love that this is something big gonna be tomorrow, right? And I think that's the truth today. So I came out from there, and then I felt, no, that's not the thing. I think I can do it for long, right? I ended up joining as everyone else as SD1, right, to software engineering role. I started building insurance softwares, right? So for Unisys as a client, and I think that's where I started my career into. While I'm building, I got an interest into consumer electronics, right? And I think that is where I made some switch, where I ended up joining Apple for 4 or 5 years of a time in US. I worked with them. And I was fortunate enough to see the iPhone 1 launch, right? To really see that, what we are today, how did this happen, and what were the key things I truly believe were important at that juncture, which probably Apple brought in, right? And I truly believe touch is one of the important aspects of the device interaction which brought into us.
Yeah, I mean, it has changed the human-computer interaction forever.
Absolutely. Right. And I think I don't think anybody has really thought about how do we interact with the devices. And I think once it came up in the palm of a human, they just felt this was very natural for them to do things. Right. And I think today is history. Everything else is on the touch, right? I think we all want to change even our personal laptops to be a touch, devices, right? So I think that's the journey. Pretty much I built software which are mostly focused on a distributed system behind the scene stuff.
Right.
User interfaces I have been mostly interacting as outsiders, right? Never been inside part of it. So I've been part of the journey where Next Computer brought in this server-side technology called web objects, right? And before that, we mostly did a publishing on the static web, right? Mostly building pages, images, and hyperlinks, right? But once this came in, I think this changed the world to really see you can build a dynamic web, right? And that's a transition which I really see as a very interesting technology which web objects brought in. Really say you can build components and reuse them out as many as times you really want to, right? So today we easily think about a React or anywhere else building a list, repeating something is far easier. It was a magic at that time, right? To really think that, okay, that's what the change it happened. I've been a part of journey also where you think about Ajax kind of world which it started, right? Where we were basically able to go to the node of HTML and say, okay, replace this element with something else now.
Right.
And it felt so magical for everybody because earlier we used to reload the entire page.
Page refresh.
Right? Now we are able to change one element and also build the animation on top of it, right? That's the JavaScript engine which became super powerful and ultimately gave us the advantage which we are able to leverage it today.
Yeah.
So that's the way I think the first initial 4-5 years where I've been building softwares, trying to think about very early part of my career to think about how does the REST can really change the world, right? Building those, really enjoying the part where stateful, services to stateless services changing, and that joy of saying that my service can be, served from any node in the cluster was a magical experience, right? Also thinking in direction, I think it's again a joy moment, right, which came into my in front of me, is that NetScaler first time built this load balancer, hardware load balancer, right? And I think we were building a very high volume, high capacity, server software, and we were not able to really scale anything like 2,000 requests per second and that kind of transactions. NetScaler brought us the load balancing capability where we were able to serve on a one fine day of 40,000 requests on 1 single second. Right. So I think that's the change which really excites me to think about something which we did on a single threaded server, platform, to ultimately bringing something which is 30,000-40,000 requests in a second. Just feels like, was it possible, before that, right?
Yeah,
but
I think
those
it is trivial, but when it first happened,
it is very trivial. I mean, you can actually pick up Nginx today, F5, and they all will give you this as a software. Right?
Yeah.
Earlier, we used to buy the hardware, and those hardwares were very, very expensive.
Yeah.
Right. NetScaler, I think, I'm not sure how much, but definitely, more than $500,000 worth of device. Right. So it's very interesting to really see that's the journey, right? I think I spent good time in Silicon Valley, met a lot of good friends, and I think today I see what I am today. I think it's mostly folks whom I work with. Right. So I think there is a lot of learning came in with people working with, right? Because I'm pretty sure I couldn't do alone so much, but when I learned from people around me what they're doing, what they're building, I think that really shaped what I've been able to learn so far.
Right.
I came back to India and then worked with Oracle, NetApp, right, for some time. A lot of people did advise me saying that, what are you going to learn at NetApp, which is the storage system product, right? As a software engineer, what are you going to really do? I said, let me go and see. It's a new place, and obviously there will be a lot of learnings. And that's the first time where I learned about building system products, right? Which is essentially gives you some of the basic premise on which we build softwares today, right? So the file storage is what NetApp builds.
Yeah.
And thinking about what they have really innovated is pretty much building an operating system which purely helps you manage the storage for anything and everything. Right? From your databases to anything from SQL to NoSQL, anything today.
I think it's a fairly big thing now because
it's fairly big.
Everything is stored on cloud, so
yeah, exactly.
File-based operating systems are very important.
Yes, right. And I think that's a time when I really think about how does the computer science fundamentals really help people shape the way they look into the technologies, right?
Right.
I interacted with some principal engineers there, and I got to know about dedupe, right? Thinking that, what is dedupe? And they said, hey, we can have 5 times of a disk storage, but I can give you 9 times of the recoverability, right? Which essentially meant that you can actually lose your 80% of the disk, and I can recover you the data which you're looking out for. By just having the 5 times of the disk amount of the same thing, right? And that is where I see when you go and work with some new people, I think you learn some basics of what fundamental storage technology can solve. And today I can think about building some state-of-the-art caching mechanism where I can just spend maybe 5 times of a RAM, but I can give a 10 times more guarantee than what I could give availability earlier. Right? So I think those are some things which I say is when you go to new places, it helps you reshape the way you look into technologies, right? And also build some of the basic premises on which the technologies are built in.
Right.
Then 2015, I again joined back Apple. I led the retail engineering team for India. All right. So pretty much that was a startup for Apple India. Right. So I been a part of the team which was less than 10 members. right? And I think when I came out, it was fairly large team today, right? So that's where I led the retail engineering team at India. I was, having this conversation, really thinking about India, what is India doing in a startup world, and I think got in touch of some interesting people at OYO, right? And they said probably I should, look into what they're doing, right? So I think as a part of interaction, I felt it's a time for me to basically invest some energy into the Indian startup ecosystem, and that's where I'm at OYO today.
Right. Retail engineering means like the Apple shop, the ecosystem?
Exactly. So you see anything which is the Apple stores, it's Apple owned, flagship stores. We don't have anything in India today. But mostly in US, Singapore, that whatever the Apple stores which you see, those stores need a lot of products behind the scene for those stores to operate.
The stores are really lovely, like,
Yes.
Some of them are completely made out of glass. The Singapore one is floating on inside the bay.
Exactly, right. I think Angela, she was the retail head, right? I think she said once, actually saying that what is the largest product which Apple builds? And she said that's Apple stores. Pretty much everything, it's a magical experience today. Still, I admire to think about when I go to the store, maybe a lot of things I personally don't know today, right? But most of things are designed in a way that which gets you the magical experience as a consumer out there once you reach in there, right? Whether you are picking up your product, whether you are trying to repair your device, right? Whatever it is, you get that magical, predictable experience, and I think that is what kind of still excites me, that what was happening in the stores.
Right. And I think OYO, you have obviously joined recently, but what does the I would say the engineering landscape looks like? Because I think you are also available in a lot of countries, geographies. I was recently on a trip to Southeast Asia. I saw like lots of OYO logos everywhere. Felt good seeing at least an Indian startup, having its footprint. I remember, I think I saw a news article when on the Las Vegas trip, OYO bought one of the hotels there. That's a big achievement in that sense. But yeah, I mean, so many users, and it's fairly challenging because I have seen building software sitting in one country, and then when your users are from different countries, a lot of different sort of things happen. So how are things going in terms of engineering?
So, I think I always, whenever one of the part of my job is that, hiring a lot of good talents, right? And I think the question is that a lot of these people ask this question is that, why are you here? What are you really trying to achieve? What is that I can do? What is that I can add up, right? And it's exactly precisely is your question today is what is the engineering landscape and how exciting it is there.
Yeah.
And what I'd say today is that hospitality is an industry which has not been taken care from technology standpoint today, right? You can pretty much see from finance to medicals to banking to everything else, right? There is a huge penetration of technology happened, which gave us unparalleled advantage of growing businesses and doing some of the things which people would want to do it in better way, right? Hospitality was ignored, and pretty much it was felt as an industry where you're mostly trying to build a marketplace, right? You're basically trying to connect the consumer to resources, right? That's the way it was basically looked into it.
Right.
But when you look into hospitality, it comes with enormous amount of opportunities, engineering, experimentation, and advantages we can bring into it. Right?
Okay.
It pretty much starts from you to build big data science platform, which can essentially give you the intelligence to really say which part of the country, which rooms are going to be sold and which will not be sold tonight. Right. And when you bring in this power of intelligence of say, your platform, this enables your some of the smallest hotel, which are even 10-room hotels. Right. So what you're really looking out is that apart from just trying to solve some of the things like, customer satisfaction, their check-ins, their checkouts, and normal data management, but you're also building intelligence which actually tells you that how can you optimize better your inventories, which are perishable actually every night. Right. So if you're not able to sell, what's the pricing intelligence? You can get it to everyone, right? And the landscape which OYO operates on today is very, very complex, right? Because these are not the hotels which are rated on a star rating, or there's no standard ratings on which you can really say which hotel is what, right? So every hotel may have a different price. Just being round the corner one hotel and another round the corner another hotel, right? Both of them can have a different price because they're operated differently. They are provided with a different experiences, different kind of services. So bringing in this uniformity about which hotel you're getting in, what's the experience you can expect, which part of the country or city it belongs to today, and based upon the travel pattern and people and festivals and everything else, you can actually predict very well that what's the pricing you should let your rooms go, so that you can get make the maximum revenue out of it.
Right.
So there is a huge potential in terms of solving some of this very interesting, problems, right? Which can basically give added advantage to any hotel owner, which can't really think about affording that out, right? So it's all about trying to bring the software products to the smallest of the hotel and get them the advantage which probably the largest of the hotel are able to reap up today.
Right. Another thing, what obviously, was fascinating to me when I had actually worked at Zomato, and our app was available in some 26, 27 countries. Maybe Zomato is fairly popular in India, but people who have used a lot in India might not even know, if you use that app in, let's say, Australia or UK, fairly different looking app comes up.
Yes.
Same app only, because different products you're selling. Delivery is not available everywhere. It's only in India, UAE. Every place is line out happening. Maybe some places they have subscription programs. That's, I think, one part which is as a technical product, what features are available or not. Another interesting thing I realized is that let's say you go to France, Italy, these kind of places, menus are much smaller. The restaurant sells only 5 items, 6 items. In India, there are restaurants which sell 400 items, 500 items. Then there's a very prominent culture in Europe. A lot of restaurants have today's menu. There's no such thing as today's menu in India. All those 400 things everybody's selling every day. Right. That also brings with it lots of product challenges, and as a result, engineering challenges. Right. Any such things at OYO, because you are in so many different geographies. I definitely believe hospitality industry, while there might be things common, there might be some things different also everywhere. And how does that affect how you're doing engineering?
I would say we don't need to even go outside of India, right? If you really want to think the diversity of what this industry really brings in, right? The way a room is a hotel room is looked in say Bangalore today, right? It is a lot different in Gurgaon, right? It changes based upon what's the guest profession, and then what do they want to do, right? A lot of time, if you really see a lot of business travelers, which Ritesh says is very nicely, is that a lot of these business travelers earlier used to come in the morning to big cities, do their business, and by the evening they return back, because there's no reasonable options where they can go and stay, right? Now today it allows them to take a rest in the evening and morning, go back to their place back, so that they don't have to really rush and get troubled by themselves. So if you look into just to India today and say what happens in say Bangalore versus Gurgaon is entirely different, the way you look into the services.
Right.
The guest which is looking into say some of these say facilities, maybe they're looking out for taxi services in Gurgaon. Maybe someone in Bangalore might not look for that hotel to provide a hotel to give you some kind of comfort on that zone, right? So it is a lot different. Specifically, if you look into the countries outside of India, specifically Europe, Middle East, right, and all of these countries, each one of those have hotels are operated differently, right? The cultures are different, right? What you expect in those hotels is different. So it is a lot more different. We do operate in sizes where hotels are as less as maybe having 10 rooms to maybe it goes to a few hundreds of rooms, right? And that's essentially pulls you back and says, what's the kind of technological solution you want to build, which kind of enables you to, be able to bridge this kind of range, right? And pretty much you want the similar experience everywhere, right? Irrespective of whether it's a few rooms hotel to hundreds of rooms of hotels, right? So, and that is where I think about inclusivity in building softwares, is that software products and any solutions which we solve, it needs to go into the every nooks and corners of your range of the users can be, right? You need to solve for that smallest use case to the largest use case and make sure no one is left in that entire journey, right? So it is pretty diverse. What you want, maybe in some of the hotel rooms, people prefer to have meals as an option, but some places they don't, right? Some places people want by default the breakfast to be included in your room night, versus some places they want to prefer to take by themselves rather than being a part of your room rent, right? So that's a very diverse and very different kind of problems to look into it. Today there is a lot of kind of awareness about the insurance, for example, right? A lot of insurance about certain cases. If you're not able to provide room, then what is the insurance you can get people, right? So that they can be relocated to another hotel, right? So some places the insurance becomes super important. Some places people don't want to really have insurance as one of the part of their room settings,
right?
So it's very diverse. While you're solving, you need to really think about your base of your technology in a way that you are thinking about all of this, maybe not building right away. The moment you reach to those countries, you do have ability to quickly tweak and basically enable those kind of options.
Got it. Another thing that I always keep wondering is, for example, like especially hotels when I'm booking, right, OYO or even other platforms like Booking.com or something like that. So when I look at the sort of filters, so from whether it's smoking, non-smoking room to the breakfast is available or not, and then amenities and all, when selecting them, and given that I get so many checkboxes to fill, I start realizing that I do have a very specific set of needs in my mind that I'm looking for these, and if these options are available, I will check them and I will try to find rooms. I just sometimes wonder, and because this is an industry I've actually never worked in, how challenging is it to sort of collect this data in the first place, ensure that that's actually valid, and ensure that as a guest, when I'm looking for a particular experience with very particularly checked out things, do I actually get that thing, and operating at that scale with all that. I think not all hotels OYO owns, right? I mean, there are lots of hotels that are owned by others, some hotels owned by OYO. So collecting the data, making that sort of searching and sorting available to that granular level, what are the challenges that go into that?
Yeah, so I think you correctly said, right? I think as we operate mostly as a software engineer's mindset, right? For us, it all looks like filters and options, and I want to give them everything, and my guest will be able to take the right calls there. Very often, guest usually doesn't know what they're looking out for. Right, and mostly they will try to see something which is very upfront in front of them and make some choices. While you really do this, a very interesting problem, the way we looked into and solved this out was that we felt some people do make some selection, but they intend something else.
Okay.
Right, and I think this is a part of if you really think from what's the machine learning can really help us building some of the very interesting solutions, is that in this way, right? So we really know persona of a person, what is looking out. If Arnav is visiting my system, there are people who kind of like similar like what Arnav likes, right? And we know, though you select non-smoking room, but you really intended the room with the good ventilation, right? I mean, I'm just saying, I'm giving example, but that's precisely what it means, right? So some places, what happens when we know there are some of the selections of the filters which you've done, but maybe few of them are contradicting themselves, right? And I think we know exactly that probably you are looking for this different thing than what you selected, right? Very often, I think we tend to get very excited about giving every options possible to our consumers. But I think it is very interesting for us to make sure, based upon the persona of person, we offer them what they can quickly make some choices out of it quickly, right? So as you said, there is just too many combinations, right? And I think some of those combinations together never makes any sense, right? And we can't let them be in front of any consumer and then get them confused. So find out based upon the user persona, based upon what has been their the choices or a pattern or what location they're looking out. we can fairly find this is the maybe set of the choices which this consumer or this guest will try to opt here.
Got it. I think the user's persona and all also probably makes a lot of difference there. So fairly interesting. And let's say these, and I'm wanting to sort of delve a little deeper into like the functioning of like, the tech org in this space. I would want to know is these insights like right off the streets that are coming in, and like the changes that happen in the hospitality industry. I think COVID obviously had lots of changes, but otherwise also like as we evolve, different travel patterns, right? So I think how the user behavior changes, how how people are looking at hotels and all those things change. In terms of like as a product engineering team, how does your team sort of get to know about these changes? Where are the places it is coming from? You're talking about different partners inside your org. So where are all these changes coming in, and what is the mechanism that they go through, and finally some features are getting built and then the users see the final impact?
So a very widely accepted pattern in industry today, right? Building features is mostly you do blue, greens, and A/B and those kind of things, right? So mostly to assess what I'm trying to do. Did I understood it well, and is it really creating the values the way we were expecting it to be?
Right.
But I know if we just keep, so that's like a generalized principle. The most of the time we build our products to, right, and try to figure out was I able to understand what my consumers are looking out for, right? But then thinking direction and find out that saying that most of these businesses are fast changing, right? So we are pretty much every next day making some decisions to say that's the opportunity we have and we need to go back and nail this down, right? So it's a very fast changing world, right? Now, what happens is a part of it is, I truly believe is that there needs to be a scientific way for you to look in that what you're doing is making sense or not, right? So one is more emotional or intentional way where you're thinking that, okay, this makes sense and maybe this will generally people will accept it to be. But you need more statistical, scientific way by which you can basically evaluate and say, yes, this is a change which makes sense and this is yielding me the values the way I was expecting it to be, right? So pretty much, going back to some of the very base of the science is like maybe time series data and those things, right? So you pretty much keep on your eyes that this is my base time series data, and whatever is the change I'm looking out, it is meeting the bar the way I was looking out, and it is not giving me any disadvantages which I'm not aware of it. Right?
Maybe make a change and orders go down, stuff like that should not happen. Like the baseline is set.
So and it is very difficult, right? Because what happened yesterday, I cannot say that exact same number is a good number, or exact more number is a good number, or less number is good number.
Seasonality is also very high.
Exactly, right? And that is where you pretty much make use of some of the very interesting machine learning time series, algorithms available widely, like from Facebook and LinkedIn, right? Which you can basically put into your system and basically say, okay, this is what is making sense, right? There is a Diwali, there is a Dashara is going to come there. And I can think about, okay, this is the days I'm going to have a higher booking than what you used to have. It might be 2 times, 3 times. And I can't think that is anomaly, right? Either way around as well, right? Whenever season goes down, I can't think my half of the booking is anomaly, right? So essentially, scientifically looking at this data and making sure saying this is making good sense today, and it is not deviating from the way generally I would want this trend line to move around, right? So that's the kind of, you build a lot of this systems which are more of observability of your business metrics, right? And basically give you the good sense saying that our direction is moving in the right direction, right? So some of these things which you deploy on the ground, right, to make sure saying that we are not really making something which we never understood and making some mistakes and creating the not creating the value for the business.
Right. So another question that I had was that these say the way you go ahead and make these changes, like you were saying, looking at the time series data, seeing that whether the change made effect or not effect, like that, and then the process also of like thinking of a spec, going actually delivering the product and all. So all of these things, you have had these 2 stints at Apple. And while I understand, fairly different industry, they're designing hardware products, and here it's hospitality and software. But still, are there like learnings from there which get applied here?
Yeah, very well, right? I think both of the industries are different, right? What you're trying to do, but ultimately, if you think about bringing joy to your consumer is what is the essence for both of the places, right? What you're trying to build and really thinking in the direction that what do I do so that the consumer who is interacting with me is getting what they're really looking out for, right? And technology as a perspective, when I look into, I feel this is a more of enabler, right? Rather than time-consuming place where we don't want people to hang into our apps for a longer time, right? If they don't intend to book, right? If they intend to book, we want them to come into our app, right? And quickly book it in maybe 30 seconds and get out of it, right? So it is very essential if you look in both of the perspective, right? When I look up my past work, pretty much thinking that a consumer, when he comes into a store, how fast it can take his device and move on, right? We don't want to, they have, they have a time which is very valuable, and we want them to do what they exactly want to do it, right? I mean, there's no need for us to unnecessarily make people move here and there. Exactly the same thing here, right? So when you bring in, as I said in the beginning, right, the way we provide the selections to what you can choose here for your room, options, if I make them very selective for your purpose, right, it is going to make your life far, far easier, right? And some of those learnings we do deploy into the cross, right, from here to there to here, either ways, right? But essentially finding some of those ways where things become far, far easier, people are able to do things faster, right? How fast people are able to do transactions, right? Thinking about nobody is left out in this entire, work, right? Making sure that every one person's problem is the important problem we want to solve, continues to be the same learning which can be deployed anywhere else as well.
Right. And I like that part that you said, everyone's problem, because and I was, I think, telling you that when we talked over a Zoom call and all this, and it left a mark was, it's long back, and I was a mobile developer working with Android mostly, but sometimes iOS apps and all. So there was this accessibility page on the iOS developer documentation, which was like there was the entire developer docs on how to make things accessible, the on-screen keyboard, all of those things. But the introduction page had a very nice line which said that we are not building software for anyone or someone, but we are building software for everyone. Right. And I think that does reflect. I think Apple has been quite ahead in terms of accessibility interventions, and I think now everybody else is also caught up with that. So that's still, I mean, it's a hardware product, and obviously there is an Apple device in a lot of people's hands across the globe as well. But when you're building, let's say, a software product like apps, websites, but then still your users are also across the globe, different places. How important it is to keep cognizant of being cognizant of this accessibility, universality. Everybody can access my products.
I think it's very important, right? It is the top of the head. If I think about my responsibility is to say, make sure this product is accessible to every consumer, which we expect them to make use of it, right? And essentially deploy technology in a way that nobody is left. I think that's the essence of the entire thing, right? Build products which everyone else, irrespective of whether they use, a specific ecosystem to other ecosystem, whichever way, right? But you are definitely making generally accessible to the most of the people who needs to be, right? If you find out a case, I usually think about how do we assess that how accessible we are is not in terms of percentage. Right?
Okay.
I usually think that, was there anybody who got into my platform and were not able to do what they're expecting it to be done? Right? Even if it's the 1 in a million person, it is still an important problem to be solved.
Right.
So essentially, taking it out is the first order of a thought to make sure that everyone who landed into my platform, were they able to perform what they're expecting it to be?
Right.
So that's the way I look into the accessibility. Now there is a different dimensions to the accessibility from, are you able to support people with, different abilities and whatnot, right? But essentially the idea is that if you're able to land to my platform, yes, I should be able to serve it to you, to everyone else the way I'm able to serve them.
Right. But even I think when we talk about accessibility, I think there's like conversation about internationalization, localization of languages and all, and also then about people with different visual abilities and all. People think that the conversation is all just about that. But for example, I personally, for example, think that if somebody has come to your platform, checked out a room that they like, but whatever way they wanted to pay with is not available, and that's also part of universality. That's also, it's not about special abilities or anything. It's just that simply that they probably have a card, but you're only allowing UPI, something like that, right?
Exactly.
So how, and I'm asking this more probably on behalf of engineers on the ground, building software today, growing through the stages. How do you, develop that sort of, I would say continuous empathy to always think that, okay, my product, what are the stages where it stops? So are you looking for that when you look hiring engineers as well? And is that something you would recommend engineers to develop as a skill also?
So specifically, when I look up to people and say, have interaction to find out, are these people going to be the good fit to team or not, right? And I think this is a mutual analysis is happening between candidate and the employer, both of them exactly at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And some of these things goes long way, right? What you really believe, what are the values which excites you, putting them in front on the table is very important, because at least the candidate himself or herself can say that, okay, that's not what I can do, right? And I think that is more honest answer than someone trying to take a call and judge this out, right? Is this person going to be fit for me or not? But I usually take and say, okay, this is the use case. What do you think about, right? And you can really find out people who come from generalized perspective to say, oh, I'm going to solve for my 80% of this stuff and 20% I'm not going to be solving because that's going to take me my 80% extra effort, right? And I think that gives you a very clear perspective to really see, are these people really thinking about solving this out, for everyone, or are they looking out to solve for a few people and then run away from there, right?
Right.
So it's very important aspect. I do care about this personally, deeply about it. That people do come with a very deep empathy about everyone who walks into our system, right? People may want to do payment from, UPI. Some people may want to do from a specific, wallet, right?
Yeah.
And we should be able to provide almost everything what possibly this country operates on today, right? So there should be no other way around that, where we are able to just, saying, oh, that's the payment mechanism which is used 99% and I don't want to look into the 1%, right? So I think it's a generally widely accepted things has to be taken care. Payment is a great example, but I do also see other parts like, when we do communications, can we just stick to say WhatsApp communication? Can we stick to just say SMS? Can we stick to just say email communication, right? Or maybe pop-up messages and whatnot. But finding out a way where everyone can get those messages, right? When we see that someone cannot access WhatsApp, yes, they have to be informed in SMS.
Right.
If they can't access SMS, they have to be informed in email, right? And that's what goes into our, personalization to really figure it out. Okay, this is a consumer and this is the preferred way they interact with us back, right? And make sure that's the mechanism we use to interact with them, right? We don't want to make their life tedious and say, oh, just because some mechanism is cheaper for us, very simple, right? I mean, it's cheaper, so we want to deploy that out and say, I'm not going to communicate to you in another one. No, right? If that's a consumer interacts on a SMS, I'm going to use SMS as a medium to communicate with them.
Right.
So this personalization goes a long way. It's not about just filtering, and it's not about only doing financial transaction with the consumer, but also making sure they're able to get info they should be getting it out. Right. I mean, it's very simple to think about, having the airline ticket booked and then there is an announcement, right? If they only think about, I'm going to do, audio announcement and then I'm done with it. No, that's not necessary, right? They have to find out a way where they're making sure all my 100% guests they have been informed about what has changed.
Right. I will proceed into another part of the question. I love asking this, especially to people who are, leading or managing large tech teams. So how big is your tech team right now?
It's a 150 plus
150
team.
plus. It's fairly large. So, and which would mean that there's going to be, fairly young people, interns, SD1, but there will also be senior engineers, leads, and AVPs, and everybody. I would say across the spectrum, only what do you see, like say Indian tech ecosystem landscapes, maybe particularly taking OYO's case, where do you see sort of challenges in engineers growing? And also you have spent some time in the Valley as well. If any contrast is there from there as well.
I think I'll probably think about dedication and commitment is very exceptional level in India today. Right. So I think when I work with people, if I put myself into their career, position, right? Maybe 2-3 years experience today, or SD1, SD2.
Yeah.
They are far more productive than what I was. Right. I mean, I'm very simple to accept this, right?
Right.
And I think this pretty much comes from a far more hustle is there, right? I think people want to go do things. They're more eager for people to come and give them complex and challenging problems, right? They're not afraid about accepting some of the challenges and making those happen, right?
Right.
I truly see today, even a 2 years experienced engineer in my team today, if you get him the right set of information, I'm pretty sure he will figure it out that how to navigate this back. Right. So I think that's commitment and dedication is at very, very high level.
Very high level.
What I see is, but there is a race today to basically do things faster, and I think in that race we tend to miss out some of the things which we were talking about just before this, right? Empathy, accessibility, making sure our softwares are maintainable, right? Is it documented well, right? So some of those things we miss out as a part of the speed which we want to achieve, right? I think that's the kind of a gap which I will see from the people which I worked with in maybe Silicon Valley, for example, right? So where people are probably going to go a little slow, but I think they're going to go very structured way to solve the problems, right?
Right.
So some of these things, I think this may not generally be a long-term problem to stay or stick around us. I'm hoping this too, as we mature in next 5 years or so, pretty much, I think that's the maturity is going to automatically come in here as well, right? But I think from dedication and commitment, absolutely very, very high bar, right? I think I myself can't put against any one of the engineers who are in my team today.
Right.
So very high level of commitment and dedication too.
Right. Also, in like when you just came back from US to India, it's also been a few years now. So I mean, apart from this, also, what other changes have you seen in the Indian tech landscape? I mean, and you can cover things which make you feel both optimistic as well as pessimistic. But yeah.
So I think we have found, I'll probably take from the way how I grew up as an engineer. And I think it may be the resources, it may be the, ecosystem or whatever, but fairly very kind of limited, information was available at the time, right? Today, I do see the current generation of engineers coming out. They're fairly well aware about what they're expected to do out, 2 years later or 5 years later. They do come with very set mindset on saying that, okay, this is what I want to achieve, right? So there is a lot of goals and vision perspective is there today, right? Which wasn't there at my time. My time, I think this was more hustle to find out and say, can I get a decent job, right? Which can pay me well and I'm respected well in the community, right? I think that was more focus, right? It was not very that this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do, right? What I found today when I work with young engineers today, they're very sorted out. They know what they're going to work on, what are the things which is going to exciting them, and they're very honest about that, right? So they will come back and tell you this is not what I want to work on, right? And that is what comes in the way that when you go back and do certain things by heart, right, I think those you will definitely go and achieve, right? And that is where I see about hustle and the dedication today is most of these people make those choices that this is what I want to do, right? And hence they are more successful than probably 15, 20 years ago the engineers were at that time. I don't mean that they were not successful, but I'm just saying today people are more sorted out. They know what they are looking out for.
They're structured with their career.
Exactly. They know this is where they need to lead to, right? They know this is the 5 years goal they want to achieve, right? So I think they're more sorted out in that perspective.
Okay. Interesting. And, I'd say both, not just India, but also worldwide across the tech landscape, what are some of the new things that sort of excite you?
I think the experience is something which excites me deeply, right? To really think about how do we build experiences which enables people to do things much more better way than what they do it today. Where I'm looking forward is thinking about is that I think as we advance our technologies in last 10, 15 years, right, where we started building dynamic webs, reactives, right, building things on device natives, right? So all of those things really enabled us to get the better quality or experiences which we want to do. I'm hoping, next few years is definitely going to be the experiences where we would want to interact with these machines much more different way than what we do today.
Right.
Today, things are fairly limited, right? Those are mostly either goes through your fingers, keyboards, or maybe, mostly you can say as a text, right? But what I'm thinking about is this is very limited way to interact with something powerful machines, the CPUs and memory and everything else, what we have it in front of us. So what I'm hoping is that I think there is the advancement in the way we provide input to these machines is going to change, right? That could be, in the future, it could be changed in a way of say AR, VR, maybe your signals from your brain or something else. But I'm fairly thinking that the number of ways by which we can input the signals to these machines today are fairly limited. And I think that is where the largest advancement is going to happen. Right?
Okay.
So I think visualization we are able to do fairly well. Outputs are, so I think it's a two part of it, right? It is the input and output is a two section I really see, which is going to explode, right? So we might want to do a lot of things without even interacting. And I think that's where we see on most of our deep learning and AI and those space, right? Saying that a lot of things happens without even we knowing, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about personalization. We never made any selection that this is my preferences. But today machines do it automatically. And I think that is where I'm thinking that the way we interact with these devices is going to change. And I think that is going to, multiply whatever the experiences we have it today.
Right. It's very interesting because I think when I was just finishing up my college and I ended up starting a company right after college as well. But part of me is also thinking of, because different people also suggested probably go for a master's degree in US. And then I started, really thinking about what I should do next, what sort of things. I figured that, building software, technology, that's something I love, but what particularly in that, and HCI is something that used to interest me, of course, a lot, human-computer interaction, and I think used to feel the same, that I think there's a lot of frontiers to be broken in, because still it is just tapping and typing, and even speech-to-text, there's so much more to be done there. I think Siri and Alexa and all of these things have also come a long way, I think. I see a lot of times people just, talking to their phones, setting an alarm and all of those things. And that's also pretty radical compared to, how things were happening before. About, the things that you are sort of seeing might happen in the future, especially like we're saying, experiences. I think in more of the physical space also, I think in hospitality industry also, people are talking about instead of selling rooms, selling experiences, right? What do you think in like OYO's context also, what are the sort of, shifts are you seeing, like new challenges that are coming or new ways I think people would be interacting with the hospitality industry you are seeing? Or I would put the question other way, somebody getting into, let's say as an engineer, if I join OYO, what are some exciting challenges I might probably be looking forward to in the next 5 years or 10 years?
So I think majority of challenges are going to be the scale, right? So the way this entire industry is going to grow, I truly see we have barely scratched the surface today, right? So I think in terms of people traveling is increasing far more than what we can expect about it, right? The supply is increasing, which means the hotels, experiences, leisure, right? All of those changes are happening. Today, if you really go to the remotest part of the India, you might find a place to stay, right? Which was not the case 5 years ago, right? So obviously the scale is going to be the challenge, which is mostly there for most of the young companies today out there, to find out the way how can you scale for 10x or 100x, the whatever the numbers which you really measure today. I can be completely wild in terms of where do I see the biggest opportunity in hospitality is going to be there, right? So I think the one part is that building software, building intelligences, building the ways to interact and negotiate, right? I think most of technologies are in that space today. If I book a Ola cab, I think mostly what I avoided is that my negotiation face to face with a taxi driver, I'm saying I don't want to negotiate that, I want to negotiate on an app today, right? So I know what I'm doing and I can make the choices without having to be face someone, right? And also get me more options. Same thing for pretty much everything else, right? Whether I'm taking Urban Collab service or whether I'm taking OYO service or whatever, right? I'm pretty much finding a way by which I can negotiate better, right? As a consumer, as a hotel provider, both the
vendor,
as a vendor, right? Now, what I think about it, a very wild thing is that some of these spaces, right? For specifically, if you think about hospitality. The radical idea needs to come into that product as well, right? So what we are building is mostly interaction technology. With the product is a hotel, right? Main product is hotel. Now, what I think about radical thought process or wild, ideas in those space can come exactly the same way we think about softwares, right? Scale, configurations, designs. Can I make them so dynamic so that I can really adapt to the, my consumer needs the way it happens today? Just think about. Right, maybe a bunch of group of people together want to travel, right? They want to have a different experience in the hotel, but this is a brick and mortar, very hardwired thing, right? How do you change the configuration every next time a new guest comes into you, right? So thinking in the direction, right? Tomorrow it could be that my needs can change and say, I want to have a very specific selective needs which I want to address my, hospitality needs tonight, right? Which could be simple in terms, I'm looking out for neat and clean bed. I don't really need a fancy 400 square foot room, but I need just maybe 200 square foot room, right? And if I can really build that dynamic configuration on this brick and mortar structures, I think that is going to be the, kind of game changing, right?
Right.
So thinking in that direction, I'm hoping, I think there is a lot of, things I see in Japan and all of those things where you can get the pods, right? So I truly see pods could be the next big thing, right? I mean, say for example, if I want just few hours of private space, right, somewhere, I don't want to invest entire 5K, for a whole night for a hotel, but I want to just, maybe you can think about lounge as a service. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can get a pod or sleeping pod or those kind of things as services. And I'm hoping that's the change awaiting. I'm pretty sure a lot of people must be thinking in that direction, a lot of entrepreneurs. And I think with that comes in, I think that is going to change the way entire hospitality is worked on today. So I'm thinking on a main product to change some bit, not just the software and the, the interaction technology around them.
Okay, nice. Also, for example, are you working on things like, say, VR or so, like, for example, getting a virtual tour of the room before booking it or things like that?
I think it's something everybody expects to do, right? I think we are not yet ready there. There is still some of the basic things to be solved really well today, right? But we can't deny that that's the experience people would want to do it.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, what comes to my mind is that the next best thing would be like if I can just take a look around the room.
Take a tour of the room before you can book, right? Yeah. So absolutely that's out there, right? And I think when the right time comes, I think we will also make some investment on that. We are definitely aware about that. I think that's AR, VR continues to be the the important technologies in this space so that people can get what they're looking out for.
Yeah. So, like we're talking about difference in how people work in Silicon Valley and India. Any sort of difference you have also seen in sort of how the tech companies itself work and how they approach products?
So I've been, when I was in Silicon Valley, I think I fairly worked with the companies who are very settled and mature, right? So I think as you spend more time, I think you set up processes, things which works for you, things which doesn't work for you, right? So pretty established kind of culture in terms of how you want to approach certain things the way you want to, right?
Right.
Pretty much, that kind of reflects onto how you build softwares as well, right?
Right.
How do you get to know what you have to build, and how do you know whether you build correctly or not? So pretty much everything has been, slotted out there. Mm-hmm. So you have a great PRD. There's going to be great technical, design. There is going to be user reviews and everything else. So it has gone through pipe, and it is very, very rare that you'll find some mistakes happening in that way. What I see from India's perspective, I think we are just growing up, right? We're just building things, right? We are in that hustle to find quickly able to deliver some of the products which we want to, right? Because we want to quickly check with the market and figure out whether this is what the product is required there or not. So we tend to take some of the shortcuts, right? And which essentially means we tend to reduce some of the steps so that we can achieve there faster, right? And I think it has its own drawbacks, that we make mistakes and then we kind of quickly correct back also. So there is a pros and cons, but I think what is suited for today's India's ecosystem is what it is, right?
Right.
And fairly, if you think about this quick word which comes called Jugaad innovation, right?
Yeah.
And I think this Professor Rishikesa, he's a director of IIM, right? I mean, he has done this work for almost like last 10 or maybe even more than 10 years, where he talks about how a lot of products were innovated with the Jugaad mindset, right? And Jugaad doesn't mean that you do things necessarily in a wrong way, but essentially it means you sense what's the objective of my consumers looks like, and you precisely go and build that, right? You don't really have this mindset to really say you want to replicate something. Right. So you pretty much know this is what my consumer is going to look up, and then you figure out what's the resources you have it around, right? Mm-hmm. And then you basically assemble them together the way your consumers' requirements are, right? So you're not really trying to copy something, but you're really trying to say that's the main key product I want to build, and how do I build this out? Right. I can think about one example which comes to my mind, right top of my head, is that back then in maybe 2005 or 2007 time frame, we needed to build load balancer, right? And thinking about that, what are the things which you can assemble together to build the load balancer? And what it came in front of us was using Apache and the Tomcat, right? Using mod JK and those kind of configuration, which is fairly a lot of people used to do, but we figured out that we can't afford to buy some thousands of dollars worth of load balancers, and it is better for us for a low scale use. We can build the software load balancer, and I think those can serve our purpose, right? And that served for a fairly long time. Right. Another example which comes is digital sign box, right? Signage box, we can say. Think about today all the hoardings which are there on big roads and big places, right? How do you digitize them in a way that you are able to use that space for multiple, advertisements and the marketing events you want to do it? And specifically, if you think about a lot of those things which we have it today on those billboards are actually very static in nature today, right? And essentially it means, and throughout the day, I don't think that a specific product is in the, limelight or is in the focus for any other audience every time, right? Maybe a certain point of a day, that particular product is in focus. Think about a cereals advertisement on a morning will make more sense than in the evening, right? And obviously you want to make use of that time for doing something else on the same billboard. So now the question comes is, if I want to build billboard, how do I do it, right? Can I just play videos? Can I do something like, so you want to find out a way which comes very close to your print media, right? So you get that quality, right? Now, if you want to build that quality, how can you build it? So this problem came to us in front of us, again, maybe 7-8 years ago, thinking about how do we build digital signage, right? Which can enable us to give the experience to consumer, whatever they want to check, right? At the same time, it doesn't give the feeling of a web, right, where you get a refreshes and all of things. It gets you that paper feeling, right?
Paper feeling. Yeah.
Paper feeling. So we thought about building this thing on top of iPad, and unfortunately, iPad was not very successful that time. Not successful in it was not very widely used. So there was no content management software which was built for iPad ever.
Okay.
Right? I don't think even today there is a content management software which is built for iPad kind of content you want to build it out of.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, we picked up off the shelf FatWire, which is now I think acquired by Oracle. And it was at very, very early stage that time. Right? So FatWire we picked up as a more of content holder, which gave us a structure on how can you arrange the content. And then we thought about how do we build the view out of it. And we came up with very out of the box thinking that, okay, we're going to create a simple view which is having the left, top and the center, right? And I think you then repeat this entire view mechanism to build anything and everything what you want to build. So think about this, that we ended up building content management software for the iPad out of something which was never built for that. That was a FatWire, right? And putting our own brain on top of it to say, how are we going to reflect this out? And that kind of quickly saves me, sometime when you're kind of challenged with the resources which you have it around, right? You come up with very innovative solutions, and which could be even, kind of 5 years or 7 years later, you can still be proud of saying, okay, that's still a very relevant solution and can be used today. Right. So I remember when this event happened, right? I think there is a lot of computer magazines that time, the Computer World, and these were the big magazines, okay, right? That time, they were all excited about what we ended up building, right? And they're talking about saying that it's a magical device which tells everyone what they're looking out for, right? And it gave us a different ways of, telling about our products to the consumer, which we were not able to do it earlier. So I think, that's a good, I see as a hustle culture of a Jugaad. Essentially finding what are the limitations, context and resources you have, and building around them what solves your real problems. Right? Not necessarily waiting for some magic to happen, essentially.
Yeah. I think, that mindset of Jugaad can lead to, really good innovation also in that sense. I had recently one of our guests in the podcast, Shobit, who leads engineering at FamPay, he was talking about they used to do this lucky draw raffles kind of thing on the app, and as that got viral and a lot of people came in, so the scale was difficult to handle to do a real-time lottery. So they did was they did like pre-compiled the lottery, and they made a stack of outcomes. And as people came in, they just picked up the first item from the outcome. So in that sense, at the end of the day, the result is it's random only. So people are still getting random results.
Exactly.
But the lottery is not happening for every one person every time. So you have just pre-compiled 100 outcomes and you're just taking the outcomes in that order.
Yeah.
So in some dictionary it is Jugaad, in some dictionary it's also actually performance improvement in engineering.
Yes. And I think that kind of also tells me something about majority of us, we solve the problems is very different in nature, right? I don't think we two different people are trying to solve exact same problem. We don't really do that, right? But I think this Jugaad, or I would say this innovative mindset is very important because this enables us to think about basics on which those premises or rest of things are built, and you kind of know that what's the key elements and ingredients I can club in together to make what I need at the moment. Right. So I think I've seen pretty much in majority of the companies where I worked, right, everywhere there was, even if you think about people management software, right, is all different in different places, right? Though those are all mature companies and everything else, but every place there is a different thing. And I always felt about that, is there a need for us to have people management software which is different in every other company? And felt like, no, not necessarily, right? But then it felt like, no, but these companies grew at different point of time. Their cultures are different. The way they have grew is different. And which makes sense for them to have a different things what suits for them. Right. So, I think the most, like, for example, the scale problem, which you just talked about, right? The lottery and you pre-compiled. I think that's the way we innovate, right? We think about, okay, what is the constraints on which I am operating, and this is the way I can really solve this. Right. So a lot of a scale distributed system problem, it feels those are common in a basic technology sense, but I think each one of us, we tend to solve different way, right? I think I heard about, I'm sorry, I'm missing, but I think it was more of content management delivery platform, right? And I think someone was talking to you, and essentially the idea was that can some of the CDN networks today we have, can they really serve my purpose? And I think Subhash, right? Yes, Subhash, right? Subhash said about saying that it can't serve what I'm looking out for, so I need to build what I really need, right? And essentially, if you need that precise thing, go ahead and build it, right?
Yeah, I mean,
right. I think what Google did for solving this BigQuery and those things about using commodity hardware and using them out, they essentially needed that, right? So I think they ended up going and solving that out.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Today, a lot of people are taking clue from that and solving a lot of other problems in different ways. The way what probably the big table and everything else, what BigQuery and everything else. Yeah.
Makes sense. One final question, because we're probably hiring a lot of people, interacting with young engineers, and a question on behalf of I think such engineers who are starting out with their career, whether in the Indian tech ecosystem or outside also, but probably more from a context of that. Any word of advice for people who are getting into the tech ecosystem, just starting out their careers here, what things they should keep their eye around, what things they should focus on learning?
Yeah, I think I will just say having the key focus on the basics is very, very important, right? And I think not solely focusing on the outer part of the technology or whatever, because that doesn't really lead you to the long way, right? So pretty much thinking, say someone wants to build their career as a software engineer, right? Someone maybe wants to be back-end engineer, front-end engineer, whichever part of it, right? It's very essential for them to think and focus on the basics on premises on which those technologies are built.
Yeah.
Because that enables us to make the choices and make any changes which we needed in future, right? That kind of enables us to say, how do I kind of retrospect with this technology, and how do I say I want to change this out tomorrow? What is the options I have? How do I evaluate them out, right? So that kind of helps you in that direction. When I was thinking about that, what I studied in engineering, maybe operating system concepts or networking concept, right? Are those useful, right? For fairly initial part of my career, I felt like, okay, those are not even useful, because I need to code something in Java, maybe do some JSPs, write some, JavaScript, CSS, interact with SQL queries. So DB looked a little bit irrelevant, and the rest of things felt like, okay, where is this getting used? But when I see it today, it enables me to really go back and think about what is the next generation technologies could be, right? And it's all going to be based upon that, right? As I was talking about NetApp, for example, it's fundamentally reinventing the operating system file management, right? That's pretty much is what that is. But I think those people build some amazing product out of it, right? So I think I would kind of advise people to make sure the basics are not left out, right? Those are understood well, whether it's a DS, whether it's algo, whether it's operating system, because this will enable them to solve some of the problems which people have not solved so far. Right. So that will give them a fundamental base on which they can solve. Innovation is not an instruction, right? And essentially it's excitement, or I would say this is something which excites us, right? So the innovation comes in that way. So if you're excited about something, you will definitely be able to solve that. It will not come because there is a superior, there is a manager, there is a lead who is going to give you instruction to do something, and you will never be innovative in that way.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's more, what meets your value system, right? And what excites you, I think just focus on those two things, and I think it will take you where you want to.
Makes sense. Thank you for that answer, and also thank you for spending the time. I think lots of new things also I learned. So thanks for sharing the time, and of course, all the best for OYO's tech team to be growing, the challenges of scale that you're saying as they come up. So thanks for spending the time with us.
Absolutely, Arnav. I think it's a pleasure, connecting and talking with you today. Right? I think a lot of things I won't really think about if I want to put my own thoughts in, saying that what are those things and what we can talk about. But I think especially the memories which you took me back today about whatever I have done, I think it was definitely interesting.
Right.
I hope some part of it is useful for someone else.
It will definitely be.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Arnav.